Hey everyone, Simple Future here, and in today's video we're going to talk a bit about the H6 Essential. Now, preemptive warning that this video is not going to be some sort of super in-depth sound designer take on this device, and we're not going to go into the jungle with tens of thousands of dollars of microphones to capture some long lost bird or something. We're just going to talk about this device from a very amateurish perspective to see how it works and how it functions. Now, I want to preemptively say that in making this video, I didn't quite have the right scope of making this video, so I framed all things a little bit wrongly. So I think it's important to first get all the technicalities out of the way, and then we go into some demo stuff, do some weird things with this thing and see how it holds up. So the one thing that is very important to understand with the Zoom H6 Essential is the 32-bit float recording, which is somewhere here on a little sticker thing. Now, there's a lot to be said about it, but I think the most important thing is to quickly talk about what it means for the recording process. With most recorders, be it handheld recorders or field recorders and stuff, the first thing you do when you start recording is set a gain level. So you kind of guess how loud the sound will be. You set your gain levels accordingly, and this will make sure that you have enough headroom on the top to make sure the sound doesn't clip, and you have enough room above the noise floor to make sure your noise or your intended sound that you're recording isn't going to get lost in the noise floor. That's sort of the traditional way of working with recorders. So when I shot this video initially, my idea was to not set any gain and then show some demonstrations and then work with the gain and see if it made any difference. Turns out the H6E actually doesn't record the gain settings out of the box. So if you use the recorder as it is in the box, you will always record without gain settings. Then you will just record whatever comes in 32-bit. And that means you need to do all the gain stuff in post, which is also the idea. Because this recorder with the 32-bit thing actually has a high enough limit where you will never clip the converters. You might clip your microphone, but the converters won't clip. And also because you have such a wide range of dynamics, you will never get issues with the noise floor, because your noise floor is below any noise floor of any microphone. That's the concept. So when I went in, I was expecting to do two parts in this video, one with the recorder not having any gain settings, and then one with the recorder having any gain settings. Turns out, much like all the Zoom PR stuff says, you don't set gain on this recorder. So everything in this video is kind of how Zoom intended it, I guess. Now you can use a built-in mixer to set gain levels on the device, and you can also set the device to record after the mixer, so that gain is baked into your files. But that basically is the same as just importing your files and adding gain to it in post. Although we will put it to the test to see if it's at the same quality level, but it should be. It's just taking your levels and adding X to the values. So it shouldn't make any difference if you do it on the recorder or in a DAW. So anyways, that's an important part to remember. So where I went in with the expectation of doing a two-part video, showing one with gain and one without gain, yeah, you simply don't set gain on this thing. So everything in this video is gain done in software. And let's first start off with a little demonstration of what I'm planning to do with this recorder, and then we'll get into some weird demos. So let's move to a week ago me being sort of wrong with things, but still demoing the purpose I have for this recorder. everyone, it's Future here, and this is a quick little demo video for the Zoom H6E, which is right beside me here on the desk. Guitar is plugged in through the pedalboard straight into the Zoom, and we also have some other stuff connected, like the JDXA, and the D50 right here. Now, monitoring it right now, it seems alright, which is actually a very nice feature of the H6. I'm planning to make a little mount so I can put it right there. So I have the mounting in view, and at a good angle will probably be standing right here. And the entire idea is that I can record the audio separate from my PC, so I can screen grab there, but I don't have to, and still have the sound going everywhere and making it very easy to move the sound around. That's the plan. Now, I deliberately didn't put too much effort into gain staging anything, because they claim it's not necessary, so that's of course a claim I want to put to the test. Right now the Zoom is also recording with the microphone, so that's just scratch audio, so I can easily sync it up with my camera. The microphone deity is still connected to the camera right now because it's a weird connector which doesn't plug into the Zoom, but we will find a way for that. So that's quickly what's going on in this video, and that's where I want to leave it for now. So yeah, see you. Now, in the next set of clips I wanted to do a little bit of a dynamics thing, so I decided I want to have a very quiet source of audio and a pretty loud transient source of audio to see if we could get any clipping while also being able to record the quiet thing. So the thing I came up with is a record player but without amplification. It's a little bit of a weird thing to do, but the consensus is that a record always produces sound, so if you just put a needle on it, it will create a little bit of sound, but it's really quiet. So that's our quiet source of sound. You will also hear the belt drive and the little motor in the record player, of course. That's pretty interesting. And to contrast that, in the same take, I will take a hammer to a piece of steel to create some nice little transients to offset that. So the question here is, can we both preserve that very quiet sound while also not spiking the loud sound? And it should be due to the quoting technology in this thing. So let's take a look. Now, another test I wanted to do with this recorder is, let's imagine you have a recorder on you to an event and you run into someone and you want to do an interview, but you don't have time to actually set something up. What would happen if you just placed this recorder on your table and recorded the sound that way? Can you do that? Does that work? How does it hold up? So for this test, I simply placed the recorder butt end on the table, and I recorded myself on two sides of a table, so let's go into that recording. So one situation you might run into is being at a convention or anything and having a recorder with you, wanting to interview someone but not having dedicated mics. So the scenario I'm trying to replicate here in my living room is having the H6E on my coffee table and having the two participants of this interview sitting at opposite sides of the table. So right now I'm in the interview position, and I can move to the other side of the table to be in the interviewee position. So let's just do that. Let's say I've asked some kind of deep question here about the meaning of life and everything, and the person being interviewed might say it's 42, obviously. So now in the interviewee's position on the other end of the table, it would be interesting to see if there's any way to sort of separate and level the signals. So keep in mind, this is just a pretty quiet room, so not a lot of background noise. We will add a little bit in a second. But if we change positions, the question is this somewhat usable as a solo interviewer device, even if you're not quite prepared for it? So once again, we're now in the interviewer's position, have been for the last sentence. And we can move back to the other side of the table. And there's about 1.5 meters between us, with the recorder sitting on its ass end, which is really not what it's made for, so it's leaning against a cup, but it should give a little bit of a perspective on how things work. Now let's introduce a little bit of noise, so I will turn on my TV. So now we have a decent level of background noise. I would say this is comparable to being in a small cafe or something. It's not too loud, it's not overpowering, so we can still talk at a very normal level. And we're back at the other end of the table. Now I have the noise source mostly behind me, maybe some reflections of the wall on the other end. It's just interesting to see if this is going to be any good. So that's the H6E. Once again, not the way it's intended to be used, but still interesting to know if you can use it this way in a pickle. And another thing that I thought could be interesting is, let's say you have this on hand and you're walking around and you suddenly have a good idea, or you want to capture something and you just turn it on and you speak into it like a microphone. So that's our little test here, holding it like a microphone. And just to see how it is with handling noise, what I'm doing during the entire video is I'm holding it actually by the housing and I'm moving it between hands. So that's the noise you will hear. It's quite a bit of noise if you handle it roughly, but I would say that's basically what you're probably going to do if you're moving around doing stuff. You are going to hand it off maybe to someone else. So I want to do a little demo of that use case as well. One more thing we can test out is using it as a handheld voice recorder. So right now I'm just holding the H6A at about, I would say, 30 centimeters from my mouth. I'm still in my living room, so you can probably hear my cat drinking some water in the background. And the interesting thing will be handling noise. So let me just change hands a couple of times to see if that makes any difference. And I'm not being too gentle with it. It's like you would be holding the mic, talking to someone, and then handing it off to someone else. Let's see how that handling noise is. It's probably not the prettiest in the world. Once again, I think this would be more of a panic mode. I need something thing to do. But who knows, maybe it's viable enough. While we're on the topic, let's just quickly disconnect from power and let's go for a little walk. So we're now walking with the H6E around the living room. Now this might be a little bit rough, but at least there's no wind or anything indoors, so that's better than the usual scenario. And this is walking around with the A6E as a sort of microphone. Again, not its usual way of being operated, but it's good to know the capabilities. If you're in a pickle, will it work and can it be somewhat viable? Alright, so that's enough of that test and let's move on. So one of the comments I saw online with the H6E was someone saying he couldn't even record his guitar into it, so let's just do that for a second. The setup affair is pretty easy. Guitar, going into a pedal chain, going into my interface, going into Reaper, out of Reaper, into the thingy here. So we get both the recording capabilities in Reaper, but also on the recorders. We can compare it, and we also have the ability to change the volume to the recorder, which I will play around with a little bit to show you just how much range there is with recording in this 32-bit thing. So let's just hit record on this side, and then we can start playing around with this thing. Cool. So right now, let's go full clean. It's pretty low signal in Reaper, so that will be an interesting comparison. Now let's add some effects. Now let's boost the output. Let's say 10 dBs to the zoom. Well, let's move it the other way. Let's go minus, but let's go minus a lot. Let's go minus 20. And for good measure, let's grab a base. So that's still at -20. Let's go to 0. Let's do +20. Alright, so let's see what we have in the DAW. Alright, so we're in Reaper now. The top track is the track I recorded straight into Reaper. The second track is the track recorded on the H6E. At first glance it might not look all that good for the H6E with all sorts of weirdness, but it's really not as bad as it might seem. So what we're going to do here is we're going to say normalize on the peaks -4 dB. Go. And just to be fair, we're going to do the exact same at the top. Normalize, -4 dB. Alrighty. And now all of a sudden, it doesn't look all that extreme anymore. In fact, you can see where we used to have block waves. We can still see all the granular details. All the little transient spikes here and there. So that's looking actually pretty good. I would say just on a visual check, this would be one-on-one the same. So you can see almost everything lines up exactly. Now there's going to be probably a little bit of a discrepancy in my ability to line things up. So there's going to be a little bit of weirdness there maybe, but in general it looks pretty good, especially considering we started off with 2 basically block waves and we got back all that detail. So it's set to -33 dBs. Let's just remind ourselves what it looked like before. It looked like that. And we should, if we normalize this, get back to -33. So these are now at the same level, which is great. So let's just solder these 2 tracks out. Now, because I was a smart person, I recorded the Reaper track in 44.1 kHz and the track on the Zoom in 48, so it doesn't exactly line out, but visually you can see there's no differences and we can still play it back. Aside from there being a small corruption in the file I took from the SD card, which is a old crappy SD card, which is to be replaced. So I have to skip this front portion because it will skip there. So here we go. Top track once again, Reaper, bottom track H6E. Now, the interesting thing here is it all went pretty well until that last track with the bass, where I gave it quite a bit of extra gain going into the H6E. Now, I don't think this is actually distortion in the H6E, because there's plenty of overhead in that signal. Could be. Could also be that my interface at that point is not outputting a clear signal anymore. Just keep in mind, this is really pushing a lot of overhead dBs into the thing. We're set at minus 37 dBs. So without normalization, this is basically a full-on block wave. So even if it was an issue with the H6E, I would say this is still a fairly unrealistic scenario to happen. So basically anything you throw at that thing, it will probably handle it fine as long as your output source isn't distorting. The odds of distorting the H6E are pretty slim, as demonstrated with the other signals, which are pretty loud as well. This guitar signal, for instance, where we have, let's see, -2. That's actually not that much. There we go, minus 33 dB, and it still sounds identical. So I think we're running into a technical issue with the interface there, perhaps. Yeah, in general, you can definitely record guitar and stuff straight into it. Not an issue. And just because I know there will be one or two people saying, well, it's not exactly instrument level now, is it, if you record through the DAW? You're right. So here is guitar. Going straight into the H6E. Nothing in between, just the guitar. So in conclusion, the H6 Essential, what do I think about it? Well, it definitely takes a little while to get used to the kind of concept of not having a gain control, because you're so used when working with recorders that you have to set your levels, you really need to think about it, you need to think about the kind of headroom you need. And this thing is just designed from the ground up to be plug it in and it works. And that feels a bit unintuitive, to be honest. Even for someone that isn't a hardcore recorder fanatic, it just feels wrong. It's weird to plug things in, press record and assume everything will be okay. But in all fairness, it does seem like you can just input anything, and as long as your mics can handle the signal, you will get a recording out that is actually useful. And even on the really quiet recordings, it's not overly hissy or noisy from the recording. It can be hissy and noisy, but that's mostly because the microphones are not sensitive enough, or there is noise in your environment which you can't control. Like with a record player, obviously you're going to have belts and motors and stuff that introduce noise into the signal you might want to capture. Now that's an entirely different process which you are not going to fix with a recorder. And you probably need like an anechoic chamber or something to block all the outside noise. So it's not really a good demonstration in that sense, but it's still interesting to take a look at it. Controls wise, there are some things that I think could be easier, like the mixer settings, being able to switch between them with the buttons. But at the same time, with the philosophy of you don't have to set your mixer when recording, I guess it makes sense that they didn't put the effort in, because you're not going to use it. Although they do advertise this as a brain for podcasting. And if you want to live podcast, you are going to have some control over your levels. Now you could do all that in software, of course. Link this to the PC, take all the streams out and do all your magic with VSTs and stuff. But I would have loved to see that in this little thing, so you can just hook it up to your PC and stream it straight to wherever you want to podcast to. But maybe that's too much to ask for a device in this price class. I don't know. Overall, it's an interesting device, and I think it will do exactly what I need it to do. The only thing that I think would have been nice was the inclusion of a 3.5 inch jack for the lavalier mic. It doesn't have that, but it does have a line out, and it does have a setting to send a sync sound to your camera, so you can more easily sync your camera with this recorder. So that's pretty neat. The clamps are a bit too clampy for my taste, but at the same time it's better for them to be a bit too stiff than too loose, because they will probably loosen over time, so that's alright. Build quality wise, it's very plasticky. I've read some comments on that. I can't tell you if this is going to last long, because I haven't had it that long, but overall it seems okay. So that's the Zoom H6 Essential from an amateur audio person perspective. Let me know what you think, and if you have any questions, I will try to answer them. Until the next video. See ya.